Excelsior, true believers! You are about to embark upon a journey, a trip to the 70s and 80s when mighty Marvel Comics ruled over all. The Defenders, Doctor Strange, the Champions, Deathlock, the Submariner, the Incredible Hulk, Killraven, the Son of Satan, the Macabre Man-Thing, and all your other Bronze Age favorites every week appearing on Defenders Dialogue. Now here are your guides, Christopher Golden and Brian Keene.
Excelsior, true believers.
Excelsior indeed. Chris, good to be back with you once again here on Defenders Dialogue.
It's good to be with you, Brian. It's so interesting to me. I read these two issues, Man-Thing 17 and 18, both written by Steve Gerber with art by Jim Mooney, last night. And I was thinking to myself, there's a certain section of the listening audience who may be really relieved when we are no longer doing Man-Thing. I, as you know, had never read, and I want to talk to you at some point about my memory of the most memorable Man-Thing story I remember reading, which we have not come to yet. And maybe it was during the later Claremont run. I don't know. But in any case, I find it fascinating that all the people say, politics in comic books. And then you read these two issues of Man-Thing, and literally, this could have been done this year.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I read these two issues as a kid. I guess I was 8 or 9 years old. 90% of what Gerber was talking about here went right over my head. But rereading them again as an adult, yeah, I agree. I read these two and I'm like, Jesus, does this take place in 2020, 2021?
Right, yeah. Know? I mean, it's like they're literally going to storm the Capitol by the end of these two issues.
Yeah. I'm curious, though, what is your favorite Man-Thing story that you remember?
Well, it's not necessarily my favorite. It's just, remember, I read, other than times when he appeared in, other comics.
Yeah.
I read very few Man-Thing stories growing up. This is the first time, as you know, that I've read the series at all.
Right.
But I do have this vague recollection of a Man-Thing story with a guy, I think they called him Scavenger, who can't feel pain, can't feel physical pain.
Yes, that I believe. I don't believe it's in the run we're doing now.
Okay.
I don't think it's in Claremont's run, nor is it in J.M.D. Mateus's run. I want to say that appeared in Marvel Fanfare, maybe, but I'm not sure.
It's possible, but I don't think so, because I didn't read Marvel Fanfare until I was in college.
Oh, okay.
And
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is in this run.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see. But yeah, we open now. There's going to be a lot of callbacks to previous episodes here, because Gerber is drawing all the disparate lines throughout the series together here in these two issues. But we open with issue 17, A Book Burns in Citrusville, and it's the aftermath of several things. You'll remember 3 episodes ago, we had the Mad Viking, the grandpa who had decided that the problem with the American youth of the 1970s is they were a bunch of wimps. Mm-hmm. And so we see the aftermath of that, the sheriff picking up the bodies. And then we see the aftermath of 2 episodes ago, Giant-Sized Man-Thing issue number 4, when Man-Thing runs amok at the high school to rescue young Alice Rhymes. And that is where we pick up with our old friend Richard Rory. He's on the air, and he's telling folks that this Mad Viking is still on the loose, and so is the Man-Thing. And the mayor has called a town meeting open to all citizens at the Civic Center auditorium. That will be an important thing. Yeah. Now, Chris, this is going to be the episode of digressions, because you're reading these in a collected edition. I'm reading them as single issues. The next page is an ad for the Mego Marvel superhero action figures. Did you have those as a kid?
Oh, dude, of course I did. I think, one of my favorite childhood memories is as so many children of our era have this same childhood memory or similar. One of my favorite childhood memories involves building a giant fort out of cardboard boxes.
Right.
But in the case of myself and my brother Jamie, our fort with cardboard boxes was actually the headquarters of our Avengers. Our Mego action figure Avengers. I think I've said to you before that my favorite one was the Falcon.
Yes.
And I think it has to do with the raised texture of his boots.
Yeah.
Would come off. People who don't know this. So they had on these sort of like nylon costumes that, clicked together in the back. The heads were a hard rubber. But those who had boots had either rubber or plastic boots. And the Falcon's boots had that sort of raised rubber whatever on them.
Yep.
And for some reason as a kid I liked those boots.
I used to swap their costumes. Batman and Captain America would often swap. But it's interesting to note the Conan action figure. Nobody's costume would fit him. But yeah, I would do the same thing. I'd build a headquarters, and it was my Mego action figures and my G.I. Joe Kung Fu grip, and those early, first run Star Wars action figures when there were only like 8 of them in existence.
Yeah. Now see, even then, I'm a stickler for continuity. I wouldn't have crossovers like that.
Oh, see, I did all the time.
No, not in that case. I think. I don't know why, but I think the action figures, I had the Mego Marvel figures, and that was it.
Yeah.
And I think like the Green Goblin was a great one. I had him. But the thing that people also, if you see a picture of it, you may understand this, that the one of Ben Grimm, the Thing, he didn't have a rock surface. He had the same surface as all the others. The rocks were part of the costume. It was the fabric thing that you snap, just like the Green Goblin didn't have scales. He was just, smooth plastic underneath, but the scales were part of the costume that would go on him.
Yep.
So if you wanted to, you could make Spider-Man the Green Goblin.
You could.
Just with Spider-Man's head.
All right. So getting back to Man-Thing 17, Richard Roy is playing Bad Moon Rising on the radio, and we see vigilante squads of citizens out hunting for both the Man-Thing and the Viking. They track the Viking down. They shoot at him, but he gets away. Yep. What happens next, Chris?
Well, I'm going to back up before we go.
Okay.
Because Richard Rory, prior to that, so Richard Rory works the midnight till dawn shift as a disc jockey. His boss is basically telling him, well, actually, this is a big deal that they're having this press conference. And since we're the local news, you're going to go and cover this press conference at 2 p.m. And he's like, wait, I'm not going to get any sleep. And his boss is like, screw you. So, employment in America. And, but Richard Rory spins the track, Teach Your Children by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Yes.
And it quotes later the line after Teach Your Children where it says, teach your parents well. And I believe that that's certainly intentional because of all of the political stories that Gerber has done, I think this one is the most conspicuous, the most, face forward.
Agreed. Gerber then jumps around. We check in with Astrid. You'll remember that she is the granddaughter of the Mad Viking, and we get a recap of, her meeting the David Bowie / Alice Cooper character and, his death at the hands of her grandfather and
Spangler.
Yes, exactly. And, she doesn't know what to do. But, she's listening to Richard Rory on the radio. We then, probably one of my favorite parts of the issue, we switch to the Man-Thing. And he's standing motionless in the moonlight. The creatures of the swamp are all around him, fearlessly. We see birds lighting on his fingers, deers and squirrels and rabbits coming up and perhaps nibbling at him.
Yeah, he's basically a Disney princess in these pages.
Yeah. And Gerber tells us he's finally reached a point of emotional saturation, which, for an empathic creature like him, that's pretty heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we get this, all of his energies are focused within. So he's kind of gone into this mental hibernation where he's just sort of processing all of the experiences that he's had. And while he doesn't have a functioning memory the way we would consider it, his experiences through those emotions still echo and linger. So he's got all these experiences that have happened there. And what happens, of course, is that the Man-Thing basically just collapses. He's basically done. He's shut down.
Yeah. And it's a gorgeous double-page spread. One of my favorites in the book. And we see just, every character that has graced these pages. Wondar, Jennifer Kale, Fool Killer, Thog, everybody. Mm-hmm. Even Dog makes an appearance there. But after he collapses, some locals from Citrusville come across him and they find him. And they want to make sure he's dead. So they fill him full of lead. And the Man-Thing doesn't even flinch.
I also want to point out that the main one among these rednecks is named Orville.
Right.
And I feel like that's such a 1970s stereotypical, after the Every Which Way But Loose films, I feel like every redneck movie or every movie with rednecks in it had to have an Orville.
Well, I'll go you one further. If you look at the bottom of page 16, the panel to the left, Orville, the way he's drawn, shares very much a likeness with Jeffrey Lewis, the actor who played Orville in Every Which Way But Loose.
Yep, I could see that.
Yep.
See, now, the problem Orville has in this issue is that Philo is not with him. Neither is Clyde. So basically, they've filled the Man-Thing full of lead. He doesn't flinch. So they load him into the back of their Jeep. And they have this brilliant idea because supposedly they're aware that the rumor is he can't die. So they're bringing him to this chemical plant.
Yep, the sewage treatment plant.
Oh, there you go. So sewage treatment plant, which, of course, the sewage treatment is chemical. And so basically, with the blessings of the mayor, they dump the Man-Thing in a vat of sewage treatment, chemicals, all of this stuff, to try to break down the chemical composition of the Man-Thing. And it works.
Yep. Yeah. He's eaten away bit by bit. And we get that juxtaposed in a panel grid with Richard Rory, who's grieving the death of his friend, even as his friend is dissolving.
Yeah. Yep. And as he's grieving that in a side room, that's when his boss, the radio station manager, bursts in, yells at him for not being at his post, and then tells him he has to go to this 2:00 in the afternoon press conference the mayor is holding. We cut to Richard Rory miking up the mayor at the conference hours later. And then we meet a group of interested citizens, Brian. They're a group of interested citizens, aren't they? How would you portray these interested citizens? Would it be safe to say that the woman who is leading this charge in 2021 would have been named Karen?
The only thing she's missing is a QAnon T-shirt. We even get a jab at the quote unquote fake media. Richard Rory, he says, I noticed your banner and the books you're carrying. Can I ask you a few questions? And she says, we're not speaking to the media. We're only interested in talking to the people.
Mm-hmm. This woman, and I'm looking for, let's see, I can't remember her name. Olivia Selby.
Yeah.
So Olivia Selby has a daughter in high school. She's been looking at her daughter's textbooks. and she is very upset, Brian, that the textbooks leave room for the possibility that man might someday be able to create life, that the textbooks leave room for atheism, that the textbooks, talk about, oh my God, sex.
Yep. The pros and cons of communism.
The pros and cons of communism, where it succeeds and where it fails. This is all she needs to decide to try to whip up the righteous fury of her ignorant brothers and sisters in town, and decide that the solution to this problem is to go and get the books at the school, to go to the high school, retrieve the books that are being used to teach their children, and to, of course, burn those books.
But she's not going to do it alone, because as the audience issues a horrified collective gasp, a Viking-clad figure bursts into the Civic Center. It's the Mad Viking, and he says, "I tried to tell you that. There are no men anymore, only sissies, because the stinking schools and the stinking music made them that way. I only killed what you had no courage to kill." It's a moment that he could have given this speech near the Capitol, perhaps. And,
absolutely. And again, if you look at the guy who was called, disrespectfully called the QAnon shaman, they're dressed just very similarly.
Yeah.
Like, strikingly similar.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that when you post this on YouTube, you juxtapose the Mad Viking with the QAnon shaman.
That is a great idea.
Because it really is like a similar thing. And basically, now, and again, let's just be clear here so people understand what we're saying. The people who are at this meeting, to whom he is appealing, they know that he is at least multiple murderer. They know he has murdered people within the previous 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah. Gerber tells us, quote, "The townspeople stand to applaud the madman who last night held them in the grip of terror."
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly right. Because honestly, that's it, right? If Mike Pence says, nope, these votes are real, they want to hang Mike Pence.
Yep.
But if tomorrow, if tomorrow Anderson Cooper said behead Joe Biden, he would be their hero. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
So these people live their ordinary lives. They're not being controlled by some magical spell or anything. And Olivia Selby whips them up into a frenzy over the fact that there's atheism, sex, and communism in the textbooks. And that's all it takes for them to be like, yes, this guy dressed like a Viking who murdered some people we know last night. He's our hero and leader now.
Yep. So Olivia sets a book on fire as the crowd chants, "Burn the filth, burn the filth." And Richard Rory, still under the impression that the Man-Thing is dead, so he's going to have to handle this all by himself, says, "This is going to cost me my job, but I can't let you do this. You're acting like a bunch of Nazis."
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have friends on the right, so let me clarify what I'm going to say here. I'm not talking about QAnon people. I'm not talking about the people who voted for Trump a second time. I'm talking about friends who lean to the right who saw through that bullshit. Okay.
Right. Okay.
But one of them said, well, why is it right for people on the left to call us Nazis? And I said, I don't think they're calling everyone on the right Nazis. I think they're calling, a certain aspect of your group Nazis. And that's not something new. Here we have it in a comic from 1970s. Richard Rory, you can't do this. You're acting like a bunch of Nazis. And he is goddamn right.
Right. And
I don't care.
I'm going to go out and if this turns off listeners, I never thought we had more than 3 anyway, so it's fine. I'm going to address this right now, just like to make clear my position, as if it isn't clear enough. The people who who maybe voted for Trump the first time, I disagree with them and I blame them because they should have known better. But that aside, I'm not going to call them Nazis. I'm just going to say, whatever. But anybody who is still with him or believes any of this nonsense And to the person you said who asked you, why is it different for you guys to say things about us? Look, I'm a progressive and probably a democratic socialist. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about what to label me.
Right.
But what I will say is this. I believe in love. I believe in equal justice under the law and equal value under the law and socially, and treating everybody the same and changing the fundamental fabric of the society so that we can enable people to be treated the same.
Amen.
And it is not a question of your beliefs versus my beliefs. It's a question of, are you against people loving each other? Are you against people being equal to one another? Are you against people having equality of justice? And if the answer is no, if the answer is yes, you're a fucking asshole.
Exactly.
And so basically, if your beliefs are founded in inequality and injustice and hatred of people who are different from you, it is totally fine for somebody to call you a Nazi.
Yep.
I mean, it's again, so if you want to know the difference, why is it okay for us to say this about you? It's because we're saying everybody should be treated equally, and you're saying no, they shouldn't.
Exactly. And if for perhaps that one listener who tuned out as soon as Chris, labeled himself as a democratic socialist, I'm a moderate, and I 100% agree with him. Mm-hmm. Look at history, folks. Okay, study the rise of the Nazi Party, and then go back and look at the footage from that fucking Capitol riot. It's history repeats itself, mm-hmm. And if you support what happened that day, and you support the people who let it happen, and you support the people who are trying to now sweep it under the rug, you deserve to be called a fucking Nazi, because that's exactly what it is.
And you've never understood a single comic book you've ever read.
That too.
Ever. Ever. You've never understood Star Wars. You've never understood comics. You've never understood any story you've ever seen or read in your life about, it's just insane to me. And again, if you're going to be so relieved when we're finally done with Man-Thing, I totally understand, because we won't be getting off on these tangents, presumably as much as we have during this run. But you can't not talk about it when these two, I was reading them last night and I'm going, holy crap.
Yeah. So Richard, he storms the podium, he snatches the burning book from Olivia's hand, and he's stomping the fire out. And he tries to tell the people, that your children have a right to make up their own minds on what to believe. But before he can finish, the Mad Viking knocks him the fuck out.
Right. And also, I should point out that the Richard Rory is trying to appeal to the people in the audience because he still believes that they can be appealed to.
Yep.
But when the Mad Viking punches him in the face and knocks him unconscious, and then Olivia, Selby, gives them their marching orders to go to the school and burn those books, man, they're all out there. The mob is all out there. And again, they're not being mind controlled.
No.
This is just their own ignorance. Man-Thing 18, same team. This issue is called School's Out. And we open with the Viking and Olivia Selby marching to the high school with a parade behind them with the banner that's flying called Mothers for Decency.
Yep. And they're marching to the local high school, chanting, "Burn the filth, burn the filth." And the kids inside the school are like, what do they want to burn? Us?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So they're demanding to meet with the principal. The principal goes out to do that. He says, all right, what's this about? We've got classes going on inside. Olivia Selby says, not anymore, Dr. Heller. We're taking our children's education back into our own hands. And the Viking says, you're going to try and stop her, little man? And then we get Olivia Selby screaming into his face, recapping what her objections are. And then we get the Mad Viking say, they want sons who will be men, not sissies. Daughters who will be mothers, not stinking women libbers. They want to do to your dirty books the same as the swamp beast did to my hands. His hands are burned from the swamp thing. And then, of course, the principal begins to argue, and the Mad Viking knees him in the head.
But before he does that, the principal says something here that really stood out to me as an adult. You're letting yourselves be led down the garden path by a homicidal maniac.
Mm-hmm.
When was this written?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, from a superficial level, there's also an echo of Footloose in here, which was made after this. But Footloose is the sweet version of this. Footloose is really, sort of religious intolerance against kids who want to have a good time. This is another thing. This is not that. And that becomes most apparent as we get to the end of the issue, which we'll talk about in a minute.
So yeah, they storm the high school led by the Mad Viking. Gerber tells us some of them are coldly grim, some are livid with anger, some are laughing all the way as their assault begins.
Mm-hmm.
Again, history echoes, folks.
So we get Richard Rory. He's already been fired, and his former boss is trying to tell him, where do you think you're going? And Richard Rory is going off to the high school to try to interfere. He doesn't know what good he could possibly do, but he can't. Knowing the Man-Thing is not around, he cannot stand by and let this happen. But Brian, we get an interlude, and I know that you'll want to chime in on that interlude.
That's right. We see an outlet pipe from the sewage plant. It dumps into a stream called Blackwater Creek, which there used to be fish there before it became a dumping place for untreated industrial waste.
Mm-hmm.
And out of it, now, I'm a country boy. I can vouch for this. You're walking along a creek in the summertime and you see what looks like soap bubbles or shampoo bubbles. It's toxins, it's poison. But we see a man-shaped blob of soap bubbles, of soap suds, rise up out of the creek and start to walk away. And then we see a very familiar pair of eyes in the midst of those soap suds. And we notice that everything it touches begins to catch on fire. Its very footsteps are burning as it makes its way toward town.
And it's headed toward town, particularly toward the high school, because that is where the spike of emotions is taking place.
Yes.
It might as well be broadcasting a signal. Saying, come here. This is where the turmoil is happening. Now, the parents have gone into the high school. They are smashing open and ripping open lockers, yanking out textbooks, piling them up on the floor.
Stealing podiums, leaving notes on Nancy Pelosi's desk. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. We're talking about the comic.
Olivia Selby's daughter tries to stop her. They get into an argument. A history teacher comes out, to try to argue with them. And the short version is the Mad Viking takes this guy and hurls him through a window where he falls to his death.
Yep.
There you go.
Right in front of Richard Rory.
Right in front of Richard Rory. He falls to his death. Please note that when this happens, the people who are witness to the Mad Viking hurling a teacher out a window to his death don't blink. This is not something that makes them second guess their actions.
Yep.
So continue.
Yeah. And, Rory thinks to himself, he should find some help for this guy, but the doctors, the nurses, anybody who could help him is part of the mob. The ones who tried to kill him are the people who could save him.
Mm-hmm.
So we then check back in with Orville and his buddies. They're still driving around town, just fucking shooting at things.
And with guns, driving around town with,
because they're apparently the Boogaloo is happening back in the 1970s. But then they see this soap sud monstrosity standing in front of them, and before they can swerve, They ram into it with their Jeep. Not a good idea. We've seen what happens before when you try to ram the Man-Thing with a car. And, you know, go ahead, Chris. In the aftermath of the wreckage, what happens?
Well, if you're talking about our friend here, Orville, he pays the piper, as it were.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Man-Thing reaches out to him, and basically it looks as if he's infected with the same materials that are covering the Man-Thing.
Yep. Basically, it used to be whatever knows fear burns at the Man-Thing's touch, but now it's changed a little bit. Not only do they burn, but they turn into this same chemical soup, this soap sud compound. So we get back to the high school where Astrid has tracked down Richard Rory, and they quickly introduce themselves to each other. And she says, you know, I'm gonna try to get my grandpa to stop. You know, and Rory kind of convinces her. She's hesitant to do it, but Rory kind of convinces her to do this. Meanwhile, inside, Olivia's daughter is trying to do the same thing. Her daughter Carol is you know, trying to convince her, don't do this. And Olivia is trying to convince Carol, no, join us, throw this book on the fire.
Yeah, they're building a massive pyre. And Olivia says to her daughter, do you see, Carol, what people can do if they care enough? We don't need judges and courts to make our decisions for us. We can run our own lives. Do your part. Throw this book on the pile. Go on. Don't be shy. I done the thinking for both of us, Carol, like always. You believe in God, don't you? You believe in America, in morality. You believe exactly as I do. Yeah. Then Astrid and Richard Rory show up to try to talk to the Viking.
And it starts to work. You know, Astrid tells her grandfather, you know, you brought me up to think for myself, to be independent and strong-willed. But the world is changing. Kids still can't grow up unless they have their own minds. And now you want to take that away from them. It's wrong, Grandpa. Don't you see? The kids here, you're robbing them of what you gave to me. And Richard Rory, looking at the crowd, he thinks to himself, it's working. You know, the Mad Viking's listening. The crowd's mood is calming. But then, unfortunately, the Mad Viking strikes out. He says, you know, I let you think for yourself and you turn against me. And he backhands his granddaughter.
Yeah. Well, hang on. I'm going to interrupt you for a second because I want to focus in on the most resonant and telling line in these two issues.
Okay.
She does start to get through to him. He is starting to listen to her. And then something in him snaps back and he rejects what she's saying. I don't care. The world changes, makes room for hippies, sissies, cowards, but not for men. You say, you already read this. I let you think for yourself and you turn against me. You love the weaklings and the panty waists. And then he says, so what if it's wrong? Meaning his own behavior. I don't like it.
Yep.
So he's saying he knows that his position on this is wrong. But because it makes him uncomfortable, the things that are happening in the world, because it undermines his self-image or the way he believes the world should be, that he is justified in his behavior, no matter if it's wrong, because it's what he believes is more important. And then he strikes out, as you said, at his own granddaughter.
Yep.
And he kills her.
Yep. You know, and Carol is shocked. And Richard is shocked. He says, you know, finally they'll see. It took this to make them understand. But no, he's wrong, because Olivia says she deserved it too. The little witch, her mind was twisted with filth.
Right. So again, let's hit pause for a second. Richard Rory has this moment that I think that most of us with working minds have had multiple times over the last X number of years. And he says they finally see. It took this to make them understand. And he thinks, this guy just murdered his granddaughter in front of their eyes, and admitted that he's wrong. But you know, It doesn't matter because he's uncomfortable with the way the world is now. And he hits her hard enough to kill her. And Richard Rory rightly thinks, okay, this is now too far. There's no way they could see this and not realize that they've stepped over into another reality. And in fact, no. Even that is not enough to make these people think anything is different. They just keep piling up the books, and they go on as if it didn't happen, and they start burning again.
Yep. And the panel tells us Citrusville cheers as its own funeral pyre is lit. Aristotle, Shakespeare, Milton, Chaucer, Wolfe, Crane, Twain, Mailer, Salinger, etc. go up in flames. But as they do, a figure approaches. He's drawn by it. He's drawn by these emotions of elation and hate and sick joy of sadistic impulses satisfied. And Richard Rory recognizes his old friend, even though he's now a soapsud monster rather than a slime monster. Mm-hmm. And the Mad Viking recognizes the Man-Thing too. And he lunges. The Man-Thing grabs him by the face. And instead of just burning, we're told that human tissue is a sponge for this odd chemical mix. The yeasty coat drains from the monster and takes over the form of the Mad Viking. And the Man-Thing reverts to his normal form. And then the Viking just bubbles away to nothingness at the Man-Thing's feet.
Yes, this lovely, yeasty, frothy, burning chemical composition reduces the Mad Viking to bubbles on the ground. And we could have used the Man-Thing in DC. So it's the dissolution of the Mad Viking that causes the crowd to finally break and flee. It's not that they think they've done anything wrong. It's that their leader has fallen.
Yes.
Yes. And Richard Rory rightly says, they're scared now, but they'll be back. They'll kill you again. They'll kill me. They'll kill anything that moves. We've got to get out of here.
That's right. So as he and the Man-Thing prepare to flee, Carol, Olivia's daughter, says, take me with you. I can't be here either. And Richard's like, okay, so the three of them flee together. It's a nice ending. Richard has been in this book since the beginning, and it's nice to see him and the Man-Thing reunited and fleeing Citrusville. But you have to wonder, where will the three of them go if Citrusville is no longer safe? And Chris, you get your answer.
Yeah, I just saw that in the next issue box.
Yeah.
It says Scavenger of Atlanta.
So there you go.
So it appears now next episode we'll be talking about Giant Size Man-Thing number 5. But then after that, we will be discussing, hopefully that means that is the issue with Scavenger.
That's right.
And then it'll be interesting because I have not read that issue since probably shortly after it was originally published. So I'll be curious to revisit it.
It will. This did not occur to us when we decided to cover Man-Thing on this podcast. But, this is the 50th anniversary of the Man-Thing's first appearance this year.
I did not know that. 2021 is?
Yep.
Oh,
50 years.
50th anniversary to Manny.
50 years, folks. And, as we said, this old Man-Thing comic resonates with right now, but it also resonates with events that occurred 50 years before it was written. History echoes, learn it. And don't learn it from some goddamn YouTube video.
Yeah.
Learn it from a book.
Exactly. No, man, I was literally, I was reading this last night. I was just thinking, here we go again. We go back into talking about how, it was astonishing because I think, and I'll make this my last political comment, I think had I read this at the time, or even had I read this 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I would have thought, well, that's too much. Like these people are clearly out of their minds. Like if this guy murdered his granddaughter in front of them, surely I would have been on Richard Rory's page thinking that would be enough. That would snap them out of it and make them realize that they've gone over the line here.
Right.
But now I was reading it going, of course. I would have thought the opposite. Had that been enough to stop them, I would have thought, oh, that's unrealistic. Yeah. Crazy.
You know what's not unrealistic, Chris?
What's that, Brian?
The works of Matt Wilderson, our sound engineer. He makes Chris and I sound good every week. Folks, I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you enjoy this show and you want to support this show, the best way to do that is to buy a book by Matt. Just go to Amazon.com or wherever you buy books and type Matt Wilderson, Wildasin in the search bar, and check him out.
I think that's great. You know what, Brian? We have not historically, other than supporting Matt's work, we have not historically used Defenders Dialogue as a place to mention or promote other books by other authors or things that we've been reading lately.
We have not.
But actually, I believe that the day this podcast will be shared with the world, our good friend Rio Ewer's new novel, Lola on Fire, will hit the stands. And I cannot recommend it enough as a thriller. Rio, I think, is one of the best writers working.
Yep.
And Lola on Fire is his best thing so far. It's an amazing thriller novel. And I'm going to throw that out there. So yes, to support the show, buy Matt Wilderson's books. It helps us when you do that, and you get a book by Matt. So it helps
right.
you.
That's right. And yeah, I concur on Lola on Fire. I finished it over the weekend. And I told Rio this, not like on the air or anything, but I told him this one time when we were hanging out. I said, with each, because he wanted some career advice. And I told him, with each release, I see you growing as a writer. You get stronger and stronger and stronger. But yeah, this new one, best thing he's done yet.
Yeah. Yeah. He's terrific. I mean, this is the thing that, it's no insult to you, my friend, to say I think he's better than either one of us.
Oh, hell yes.
And I think that I want to see him get the recognition he deserves because he's really so good. Yep. And again, as you say, with each book, he just gets better. So I hope that people pick it up. And that's not an ad. We didn't get paid to say that. It just happens to be that it's coming out right now.
Yep.
Anyway.
All right, folks, we will see you back here next week for Giant Size Man Thing issue number 5. Chris, send us home.
Excelsior, true believers.
See you next week, folks.
Defenders Dialogue. You can listen to this episode and all previous episodes for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play Music, and wherever else podcasts are available. Defenders Dialogue is written and produced by Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Our theme music is by Xander Harris. Our engineer is Matt Wilderson. Check out his books on Amazon.com.